Yeah, good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Mani Mamalan. I just wanted to basically just thank you all for coming on Monday evening at 3 to 4. This has been a daily affair for the last week, whole week. We had the best of people on the show. Dr. Gandhi, Udayan Goyal from APIS, Sushma Kaushik from Avishkar, and Mr. Kasa Sudhakar from RBA, ex-RBA as well. And thanks a lot. The attendees have been basically increasing every day, and it reached about 70 plus last week when Mr. Governor was, Deputy Governor Gandhi was on the speaker. And I just want to introduce you. Today is basically just uh, the panelist. I won't say panelist, but I think he's a moderator as well as a speaker. Let me introduce Mr. K. Krishna Kumar. He's the moderator for the show. He has been conducting the show for the last 1 week. And about him, he's could I call him a banker as a technologist? He's both a banker and a technologist, a marketing man, sales guy, a talk show host, computer. He's a multifaceted personality. And of course, a very handsome man, even at this age. Yes. And thanks a lot for KK being here. And rest to you. And he has been a banker. He used to work for ABN AMRO when I used to know him. Then he went to Merrill Lynch. Then he joined TCS. Last, he was CEO of CH Technologies when he retired from there. He doesn't look like basically he's a retiree. So he's so active even now. So over to Krishna Kumar. Thanks, KK. Thanks, Mahesh, for coming on board.
Thanks, Mani. Thanks, Mani. That was a great introduction. Thank you very much. Today, in our midst, we have Mahesh Ramamoorthy. Okay, and in this era of payments and COVID and payments and how the entire landscape is going to change, I think we have one of the best speakers who can tell us as to how payments are going to revitalize the entire landscape as we move. Actually, so far we were talking about the COVID days. Now we are going to talk about the exit from the pandemic situation. So it's going to be the post-COVID days. Mahesh, as we all know, he is from FIS. He's a global sales side. And so Mahesh, welcome to the show. And how has been your work from home been? Has this something new skills you have learned in this process in the last few days?
Yeah, thank you, KK, and really appreciate everyone for inviting me over to this particular session. It's really appreciate this. Yes, I think if you look at it over the last 1.5 months, it's been a very good adaptation. I would say adoption to the new normal is what I would call it, as what everyone has started now calling this new way of life and way of looking at how we need to work. For someone who's probably been traveling 20 days a month, pretty much across Europe as well as Asia Pacific, this life back at home has given me two positives. One is to the fact that you now know how to probably spend more time in front of the computer. Not a good one, but yes, it allows you to spend more time in front and also at the same time give more time to the family. Two is you also start to begin to see how collaborative you can be with your colleagues as well as with your clients. We've started collaborating with clients over different tools, utilities like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and we speak to clients at very vague times, right? Whether it is in Europe, whether it's in Nordics or in the US or in India or Australia. So I think to me, two takeaways. One, the positive side of the story is, yes, you've started to readapt yourself to the new normal. And on the negative side is you tend to work long hours, I would say, because my work starts at 9 o'clock, it doesn't end before midnight. So which means that now you start to realize you can deliver more, but at the same time, you now need to contain yourself to see what you can do best. So it's both sides of the story. But yes, that's the way forward now, I believe, for the immediate future.
Oh, thank you. That was nice, Mahesh. And good to know that, we have much more productive hours. Looks like these days are not 24 hours. It looks like some 30 hours on hand. So that's the good part of work from home. Mahesh, as we know, in the March monetary policy, RBI governor left with us one thought. He said, "I leave you with this comforting thought: stay clean, stay safe, and go digital." Okay, so it was like he was encouraging people to take to more and more digital way of doing a way of business and life, perhaps. Okay, do you think that we need a regulatory support to kickstart a payment renaissance in the uh, post-pandemic? And if yes, what are the areas regulators need to revisit?
Well, I would say that regulators need to be helping us with the right rails and with the right frameworks, and in terms of the right guidance that need to be there to kickstart our business, to revitalize the entire business. I think that's very important. I think kudos to the government and the Reserve Bank. I think they're working through some very good packages of opportunities, how they should do it. Having said that, a lot of what we need to drive would be between the people who provide the service and the banks and the fintech entities. I think these are the entities who need to come together under a broad framework that the regulators really are going to build out for a much more level playing field, and be able to drive that much more better. That's the way I would look at it. I think go digital is a mandatory now. It's no longer an option. So cash. No, just to amplify to what you're saying, KK, is the fact that cash has been always the king. Will continue it probably a bit later, but what is going to happen is everyone is going to look for options of how you can go a bit fully frictionless, more secure, how you can do smaller payments that are much more lower cost of transaction. So these are going to be the new norms of how any innovation that happens around it.
Very true. Okay. So I think, as you say, the use of digital media will be much more. But I agree with you. Cash doesn't go away. Even in United States, cash still is a dominant factor in the economy. So that will stay. And but I think the more and more we are using digital, do you think that RBI may come out to kickstart to push digital? They may even ask, say that if you are withdrawing cash from the bank, we could charge you a small fee. You think such thing is expected?
Well, I don't see. My personal belief is we should leave the choice to the consumer and to the provider of service. I think the guidance of what needs to be done is go digital. Those ones have to be the framework, and the approach needs to be there. The safety, what is the kind of robustness of the rails that are put behind. I think those are very apt. Those have to be defined. What is the best option that a consumer adopts is all going to be driven by how the service is being rendered. Today, why is cash being still, before COVID, why was cash still being used, right? Cash was still being used because the front-end infrastructure was not there to be able to support all the kind of payments. Now, UPI grew tremendously, but we were all not rolling out contactless payments. The contactless payments was being rolled out with a minimum entry point. But today, that life will change. Now, who will do the change? RBI and the government can give us the guidance to it. But the adoption and implementation, possibly in terms of reducing the import tax or something around the cards, contactless cards, could be something that the government can help. But in terms of rolling out the endpoint infrastructure, rolling out those capabilities, and hence being able to make sure it's a profitable business for everyone is what is going to make the digital payments grow and cash come down.
That's nice.
So, yeah,
I got it, Mary. I think that's well answered. You are you're a global head of FIS, and you've been like follow the sun kind of a model that you are, because you have to be present here when the other countries are waking up. So you have a good knowledge about how others are coping up perhaps with this crisis. Is the situation different in India? And are there any lessons for the Indian bankers, Indian leaders from the European counterparts to learn?
See, I'd say it's a good question, KK, and each country is in a various stage of adoption of technology, various stages in adoption and implementation of its capabilities. Let me give you an example of Australia. In Australia, I would say that very interestingly, contactless payments is the way forward, right? Anything and everything, you go to Australia, you hardly take out a cash because everything is contactless, and it is either through the mobile direct, through your Apple Pay, or directly. All cards have the contactless, every endpoint device. I've been there for 3-4 weeks at a stretch. I have never visited an ATM to even withdraw one single dollar. So that's the beauty of what Australians operate with. For them, that's a way of life. You come as you get further towards the west, each of the countries, Thailand, it's a mixed bag. Right now, they're beginning to adopt the digital adoption there. If you look at Philippines, they're pretty much probably very much behind India in its curve, and they are now trying to work to adopt a lot what India has done. In fact, I can tell you that they are working very closely with a lot of the viewpoints from NPCI to see how they can adopt. So they are behind the curve. Singapore, very ahead of the curve. But as you get to other places in Middle East, they're all looking to gain into the digital payments. Europe, very easy. Nordics, Europe is again, I would say, mixed bag of digital as well as cash, but predominantly card-based. Nordics is completely cashless. You can go around to the Nordics for months together. In fact, cash is at a premium. You can actually work everything without a card. You can't do anything. So whereas US, as you go further into the West, the US is still pretty much has a mixed bag, say 60-40, 60 of cards and 40 of cash. So it still works both ways. So adoption is, in my mind, three factors. One, it's a factor of how the government as well as the central agencies create the regulations, create the safeguard nets, safeguards, rails to implement the right thing, subsidize certain transactions in its early stages to help adoption, and then ensure that every player that is there gets the right business models in place. Everyone has to make sure that the business models are right. And those business models are very critical for us for a success. Because if you don't, it will always get skewed. One can just keep on deploying like what you've seen on the ATM business, right? You can just go and deploy like mad. You can go and have a top line, but the bottom line just screams it out. And at the end of it, when you get into such challenge situation, you just go water belly up. So you have to, I think, to me, each of those constructs have to be well managed. And each country is in different stages of evolution. Some have moved ahead, some have not moved there. The third factor, I would say, is very interestingly, is how the population has to be brought into it. It's very important. And in that, I would say India has done a fantastic job of using the Aadhaar deployments, right? The Aadhaar-based deployments have been fantastic. They've used biometric to a large with the microfinance and the BC models. But today, that will pose a bit of a challenge. Now, I know we can talk about it. So the BC model itself will say, can you move from biometric to retina-based authentication to help it? What do you do about it? So these are questions that will now be asked, and we can talk about it down the line today. But these are questions that I think are going to be very important for countries like India, countries which are in the evolution of development of payments, who can leapfrog where others have not been and help its own, I would say, large population. Over to KK, unless I probably can talk more. I can't. It's very passionate to me, but I'll just hold myself. I'm saying I've given you a tips of what it is.
No, I think, yeah, I think it's very important for us to understand, because you have a global view, because of the work that you do. And I think what you said, you didn't touch upon China and their ERMB that they are announced. Is there anything that we have to learn from that, or we have to do something about it?
Sorry, KK, you got disturbed for whatever reason, maybe in the net or something, but you were a
Yeah.
bit garbled.
Okay. So I said you didn't touch upon China. China has, recently announced trade linking with the cryptocurrency, which is the RMB. Is there some thoughts you have on that?
Oh yeah, means, well, they take lead. They have some luxuries, I would believe, in terms of taking lead on some of these. But I would say that going digital, going adoption of the entire cryptocurrency is all imperatives that every country will now look for. But I think what's important is not to jump onto the bandwagon immediately, because at the end of the day, in these cases, I would say that it's a good lead, it's a good start. But this is where we would probably look upon our central government and the RBI, the central regulator, to establish a very clear framework, because otherwise people can go berserk. Now, the companies can go berserk with ideas, and there isn't any single, I would say, framework. Like we have frame for various interchanges, but you don't have that in place. It could be country specific. Once you have an adoption of a single framework or a couple of frameworks, I think then it is great. Where I like what India is doing and vis-a-vis what China is, the alternative in NUE and all those opportunities that are getting emerging. And if we are able to accelerate some of those where we get private-public participation more constructively into enabling our digital payment story and integrating these digital payment story with the trade businesses and the other parts of the businesses, I think it will be a great success for us as in India.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to learn from many countries, and I think we should adopt what is best for us, for the people. I think there are, if you can identify, we always say that COVID-19, post-COVID-19, there's it's going to be a digital transformation in banking, particularly in banking, is bound to happen. And you are dealing with a lot of banks. Can you identify, like say three prominent areas of digitization which banks can actually must do? Otherwise, they're going to be losing out on business.
So, great question, I think, KK sir. I think here is my take on it.
Yes, please.
Up till now, banks have been pretty much working on creating its own infrastructure. And I wouldn't call it as right or wrong, but what has happened is they've always been in an ecosystem of establishing control within their own ecosystem, building everything as silos. Mm-hmm. I think as you move into a post-COVID situation, and I would say it's post-COVID doesn't mean 3 months or 4 months. It's going to be a bit of a, I would say, back and forth, a W curve coming in and out. It's not going to be that easy. But having said that, banks will now need to choose about how they start to collaborate more with partners. And when I say partners, means technology partners who will core, which means banking is their core, making money out of money is what is core to them. So if they are in a position to be able to focus on what's core to them, there are these other partners who will now play a very important play in taking away and driving much more better digital adoption within their ecosystem. To say a few things, like for example, if you want to launch an entire digital play for, say, your entire merchant play of creating a complete, I would say, cashless or a frictionless approach, or creating a system of contactless endpoint, there's no point in a bank trying to see how it has to put the whole ecosystem in play and manage it. I think they should now collaborate with common partners who are there. And these partners should be tied in with a much more linked to the growth strategy. And they should tie in with their growth strategy and enable the partner drive the growth for them. So that is going to be a much more productive way for them to run their digitalization on the front end. On the back end, it is all going to be how you're going to do approach of using technology. And I go away from payments to making it more technology enabled, where the technology has to make them not fixed to a particular seat. It has to be remote operated. It has to be more with robotic process automations coming in, automation being the name of the game, and more importantly, enabling work remotely. And that is going to be the play for the next 24 months or at least foreseeable future. So working from home doesn't, I would not say work from home. It is, I would also add add a small end to it, work from near home, because not able to work from home, right? There could be other constraints that we need to look at it. I'm facing it today in FIS, where we have 16,000 people and not everyone is able to work from home. We may give them the assets. So it will be kind of work from near home. So you should enable a smaller part of WeWork coming. So which means you're going to have different approaches. So digitization from a payments perspective, digitization from a transaction enablement perspective, frictionless, how do you enable frictionless? How do you adopt RPA? And last but not the least is about how do you reduce your overall capital investments and be able to make it more light. I think that's going to be a very big aspect that every bank will start to look for. And that play has to be there. This, I would say the COVID presents a revisit to a bank strategy. It will necessarily force every organization, forget a bank, every organization has now to go back to its table to say that how do you collaborate, how do you expand, and you do both of this securely. So the last but not the least is important is secure risk and be from your risk management perspective. How do you become more secure? Today, we've had some very good guidances from the Reserve Bank and from a lot of things, a lot of other entities. But what's more important is as you start to get digital, as you start to make it more frictionless, as you start to go remote, it's all about making sure the transaction is very, very secure. So which means a lot of the ability of any bank to collaborate and to make sure the governance around the security and the operational processes are good is what is going to determine success.
Okay, that's good. I think you touched upon the transformation angle, and I think that's important. I think while we are focusing on banks, I think I agree with you. Every organization needs to look at realigning itself, reimagining its business, and so I want to take some questions from the audience, from the participants.
Sure.
So I have a question for you on the new umbrella entity, NUE. Recently RBI announced this. Okay, so how will this change the Indian landscape of payments? This is a question asked by Hitesh Thakkar. Thanks, Hitesh, for asking this question. It's a very relevant question that you're asking, and I think no better person than Mahesh to give answer to this. So Mahesh, the question is,
well, to me,
yeah.
It's a great question. What's going to happen? So today, are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes,
okay.
We can hear you.
Brilliant. I think the setup of the NUE is going to bring about adoption of what's the latest out in the market. There are going to be entities like FIS, like you've already seen the Googles of the world, or whether it is the Facebooks of the world, as well as Microsoft's, all of them wanting to bring in their best in technology to drive newer opportunities. That's very clear. Two, I think it's a great opportunity for us also to be able to see how we are able to have alternative to currently an entity today who's doing a great job. So which means as a larger ecosystem, if you look at FIS and you look at NPCI today, they're doing a great job. And we support them wholeheartedly. We have run the national switch. So I can tell you we do a great job there. But for a country like us, which is growing in its digital payments and is only going to skyrocket at about 20-25% year-on-year growth, it is very imperative we have an alternative mechanism. That mechanism allows for India as an overall is that it has alternative newer technology mechanisms to be able to interconnect itself and also drive the ability to to enable the digital payments and better interconnects with cross borders and everything. To me, I think that's a great approach. And you will see some good companies willing to invest, willing to bring in a lot more newer technologies, and something that you've not thought about. Something you think maybe 10 years or 5 years would suddenly be available in India. And why not, if it is going to help us? And as India as a country, if it's going to help us, reduce the cost per transaction, make it much more secure, why not? I think then it's also going to help us digitize the entire cycle much faster than what we would have thought about. So to me, I think these are good thought, very, very, very sound thoughts from the central bank, and I really appreciate for them for that.
Thanks, Mahesh. Hitesh, I hope your query has been answered. I would request participants to, if you have any query, please use the Q&A or the chat and post your questions. We will try to get across to Mahesh as much as questions as possible, time permitting. So you could do that. While you put your questions across, let me ask Mahesh. Uh, Mahesh, what would you advise, say, to each of these entities in the financial side, say the banks and the payment service providers, and typically the payment value chain partners? Banks, I think you're covered quite decently. The payment service providers, particularly like our own company EPS, and the payment value chain partners. What are the kind of couple of advices that you could tell us in terms of how we should shape our business going forward?
Well, I can be a bit more controversial, but let me put it across to you. So when you look at payment service providers, I think there are one thing we need to change our mindset is to change our game to becoming much more point players, to becoming much more strategic players embedded with the bank organizations, where you play it more in terms of how you're going to transform the bank and also help them reduce their overall cost of their old processing cost. And hence, how do you enable service? That's one thing we'll have to. So which means be a part of the transformation agenda, not as a vendor, but as a partner. That's one. Second part, which I would like to emphasize is play to your strengths and play to a situation where, play to a finance where you don't eat into your bottom line badly. We have to sustain. At the end of the day, what determines a sustainable growth is about having a healthy bottom line too. Not just about the top line, but also making sure that you have the right cash, you have the right cash flow, and you have the right margins to sustain. A lot of us, and we are also culprits of our own game, I would say, where we end up, just going all out, but not able to sustain in the longer run. I think that's a very, very thought that we need to play with, because at the end of the day, we are here for the long haul, not here for a short-term play. So we need to be there. And third is adopt new technologies and showcase the value behind it. That's very important. In my mind, these three are very, very critical for us as the payment service providers.
Okay, that's good points that you come up with. Do you expect any, we have a current set of models in payments. Are you expecting any new models to emerge in the post-COVID days?
When you say new models, I would say banks, I could say this from my experience that I'm seeing in the last 2.5 months, right? Yeah. And I called this out some time back. New models in my mind will be banks will have to look at more controlled, more aggressive outsourcing with partners, focus itself on very hard, very well-constructed governance. What's also going to happen is the rise of digital payments is also going to be definitely pushing the need for a very, very well thought about framework around risk management. both in terms of online and offline risk management across not just transactions, but about the whole portfolio itself. So to me, these new models will start to, and more importantly, the world would become a much more combined place for doing transactions. It will become, you will see the speed of transactions is reduced. So which means that with digital play, the risk management is only spread its wings. So you have to be much more sharper in terms of what you do. So to me, I think there will be models which will arise in terms of how you better manage it. Focus will be not in terms of building everything as silos, is to more collaborate and adopt. I think these are some areas that will emerge very soon. And I have already seen adoption of this coming in the UK. I have seen adoption of this coming in interestingly, in Philippines market, where banks are willing to talk to companies like FIS and say, why don't you transform us? I can't sustain my capital investment. Are you willing to come here and transform us? And I'm willing to probably be a partner in my growth strategy or the country's growth strategy. So I think these are some models which will start to emerge and which will be radically shifted from where we are currently in today. Now, it's only been in bits and pieces. It has not been a sustained effort. I think that model will change at least for the next 3 years.
Okay. So Mahesh, I heard a lot about Philippines. Philippines, there's a lot of transformation happening from reforms, from digitization, and the way the entire population is looking hungo on to kind of take the country ahead from a poor third world country. Do you see any such major shifts happening in Philippines?
Oh yeah, I think I would say that the government. I think I would say that the government, the entity which is similar to our NPCI and the RPI, they have been very closely talking to NPCI. It's NR, and they are coming out with what is called NRPS, right? The National Retail Payment System, and essentially it attempts to bring about a lot of fundamental changes in the way digital payments adoption is happening. And just to name a few, I think there is a large deal that MasterCard and VocaLink is coming in there to transform its real-time payments. We are doing a lot in terms of how we are transforming some of the digital payments as FIS. So if you look at Philippines, they are a market which I see as going to have a significant population, significant approach to adopt mobile-based technology, and hence that change will be dramatic, as well as that their population is also young population, which is now getting into the kind of mid-age and willing to adapt to new technologies. So you're going to see that serious adoption.
Okay, so I think we should look for some serious competition coming from there.
Oh yeah. So I can see that. Our biggest next big market that we have outside of India is Philippines.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's news. Okay, cool. Okay, I like I said, I want audience to put the chat is open, the Q&A is open. I can also request Mani has been wanting to ask you a question. So Mani, go ahead and ask a question. You can unmute and ask.
Yeah, I can. So I'm just going to be basically just not so serious about payments and banking or economy. So my question is to Mahesh is, you have been locked down for more than a month now at home. Have you ever been basically through this experience beforehand? How are you taking it? What are you doing at home? Actually, jadu marti basically just or pathan do. What is that you do?
Well, I think, Mani, it was tough for me. Has been running across different airports quite often. So, yeah, the first 2 weeks were difficult, but I think, as I've mentioned, you start to realize the importance of being with family first. So you start to see that there's so much of work where you could contribute for the overall household work. So it's interesting. I've learned some new skills. So I would put it in a much more polished English way. I've learned some new skills. collaborating with the household work, trying to support them. But at the same time, it also gives me the realization about how you need to be more minimalistic in your asks, right? Uh, we've all survived, right? It's not that we've not survived.
Yes.
So it's not that you need all those goodies that you otherwise you walk into any airport and keep buying. So which means that you started to realize life is more precious than what it was before. So I think that's a huge realization for me. And I do feel for the people who probably don't have all the luxury we have, right? So many a times when you step out and you go to buy the or whatever and fixed times, you see the state. You really see how the economy has been hit, how those daily laborers or wagers have been hit, and your heart goes out. You do what you can do, right, to your own staff and everyone. You help them, but there is a larger population and the impact. I think we've been blessed by God to be where we are. That's all I will say. I always thank God in the morning that, hey, my family is safe, the world is help, God is there to have help me get up and be safe around.
Yeah.
But please help us come out of this at the earliest, because we've learned life is much more precious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well said, well said, well said. Yeah, I have one more question, okay, if you have time.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. No, I think I know Mahesh for a long time. I think it's for so many years now.
Okay.
so both of us used to be basically just fond of gadgets. Now I think he's not going to buy anything on the gadgets. Now I can know. I think it's he'll be just more close to the family and doing something. The skill set, I know. I think what are skill sets he must have done. He was not able to And thanks, Mahesh, for basically being here. Great. I think go to the other question that you can have. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I have a question to you, Mahesh, from Sagar Patil. He asked a question to you, and I think it's a very relevant question, though some parts you may have answered. What will be the future of cryptocurrency in India in light of Supreme Court setting aside a circular of RBI banning trading in cryptocurrencies?
It's a very relevant question.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very relevant. Now, as we jump into being more digital and being into less cash and being more, how we can be more frictionless, I think what's important is for us to have a much more uniform framework for buckling. So if anything that has to scale has to have a framework. And I always believe that it has to have solid rails with anything that is finance related, anything that's money related has to have the right risks and the guards associated with that in place. To me, those aspects have not yet been well thought of or have been well brought together. Or probably if it is there, but has probably not been articulated well enough. If we are able to bring those two aspects well over the next 5 to 6 months, and maybe NUE is one of the vehicles to do that, I would presume, and this is where I would say that we cannot be left behind that curve. In the next 6 months, I would say that there is a demand. The demand side will pull for a cryptocurrency. There will be a revisit to what we've done. And if we as a country, with the help of our central bank and the bankers, as well as some of the fintech entities come together and put those frameworks very well in place and articulate how it has to start its game and how it really is managing the risk associated with it, there should be no reason why we can't adopt it. I think it's only held back for those. Else, I think it's sooner than later. I mean, we're going to see it in the next 6 to 8 months. I think it was not probably well thought of from a guard perspective, which really could not adopt it. Now, we were experimenting quite a bit with a few banks, but we knew that without a standardization and normalization, it kills it itself. That's my take on it.
Super. Thanks. I think that's a relevant question, relevant answer, and I think That was a very good question from you. I have another question which is very close to EPS, which is ATM. So, do you expect any direct government stimulant for ATM and related service industry, in particular in the coming quarters? This is asked by Ritesh Singh.
Sorry, if you can help me once. What's the thing?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. So Ritesh Singh asks a question. Do you expect any direct government stimulant for ATM and related service industry in the coming quarters?
Oh, I would probably help. I would also be a fan of getting some stimulus. I would be very keen.
Yeah.
I would expect some form of stimulus coming in from the government, especially in terms of how they're going to manage the entire impact that you've had around some of the cash side, around some of the transaction side. We are more in the interchange side in the short run. I am not seeing it in the long run, this business by itself sustaining in the way it is, because, and I may be a pessimist around it, but as we go more and more frictionless, digital, the ticket size per transaction may improve, but the number of transactions will start to come down. And it starts to come down, I would see that the amount of ATMs in itself will start to get net new deployments will start to come down. It may not grow up the curve. So I would say short term there could be some support coming in from the Reserve Bank and Central Bank for sure. How they're going to do it, obviously, the group CATME and we are all a part of that group. We are seeking what best we can. We put it across. Will it be right on top of the agenda? Maybe we will need to probably make the right noises to help that support coming in. I would very keen to support that. I would already see that we have already seen some of the SLA waivers and everything, but that's not direct stimulus. That's an indirect stimulus. But stimulus I do expect it. Long-winded answer. The short answer to me is yes in the short run, no in the long run.
Okay. That's great. And then that's many would have asked you this question because you're all so much related to ATM. Another question that has come from the participants are, I think you may have answered this, but you could just touch upon it. Since digitization is the way forward, would you be saying that the Indian digital tech companies have a huge market outside India?
Oh yeah, why not? Well, I would say that I would be absolutely gung-ho about how we can do it and how well we can do it. I think where India can now beat a lot of the other is about being a robust partner to to any banks or any other companies. I would say cost save program. Let me put it that way. At the end of the day, if you look at any of the automation side, it will all be about the cost save. So you need to be a partner to that. So as a part of that transformation. And in terms of digitization, yes, I would say there is enough and more opportunities across wherever I go. Now, as FIS, we've started an entire SBU for digitization on the back office side, and it's doing robustly. We have so many opportunities flowing in from the Far East. It just flows in. I think there is huge opportunities, and the ability for us to create the repeatability, to have quality in what we deliver. I think that's very important. I stress that word quality in terms of our outcomes. We will go a long way.
Absolutely. Another question is, I think you've answered it, but again, do you see payments business shaping up in India in the near future? I think I answered that, but you can just touch upon it. And one more question that has come up is, do you see new models of payment business coming up in India post-COVID?
Well, I think the second one I've answered, maybe yes. New models. I'll take the second and the first later. So the second, new models, absolutely. You will see the payment is now going to play a collaborative game with the banks and with and who are going to, more importantly, create good customer experiences. Good customer experiences, and I use the word customer experience, along with transformation to banks, are going to be successful. So there is definitely new models. At FI is also, our two-pronged strategy is all about customer experience and being your transformation partner. So these are going to be our themes for us, and we are absolutely gung-ho about those areas that we're looking at. Which is, and then the first question that you asked me was, if you, KK sir, if you don't mind.
Yeah, he asked question is, what are the, do you see payments business shaping up in India in the near future? And
oh yeah, means,
absolutely.
see, we've obviously seen a dip, and the dip is going to be, a dip has been because people have started to live by what they require as what is necessity, not by what they need to have as need to have, right? Today, everyone is living by what they have to sustain themselves. So which means it has taken a dip. Will it change? Absolutely, it will change. When will it change? I think, in my opinion, about 6 to 8 months, nothing before that. Because for us to start spending more is all about getting back into motion, getting back into connects with the various clients and starting to travel, the travel industry, using the hotel industry, the shopping industry, the retail industry, all of that. So the cycle of consumer spend, as it starts to go, I think 6 months, it will start to see its back, like as a small curve of hockey stick, it will come up.
Yeah.
The models will determine it, because now, as I've touched upon, it is all about how you can do frictionless, contactless, secure payments. If you're able to bring this and make it much more seamless, is what are the models that will make it very, very adaptable, and it can be used by a lot of people, the consumers on the front end. It'll be brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you touched upon that there are new models coming. There is going to be a change in the landscape. So almost all the fintech companies, that includes EPS2. One of our businesses, most of the fintech companies businesses come out of the PSBs, public sector banks. You think they will be in a position to change themselves? Will they adopt these new landscapes that are coming up?
I think that my personal belief is that everyone would need to go back to drawing board. If they like I have always stated, if you continue to drive your older model of approach, you're just going to build cost. You're just going to create costs, and that cost will not be, at some point in time, will not be acceptable to any running business. Any going concern cannot take this if you do silos. So to me, every bank, whether it's a public sector bank or any private sector bank, will go to rethink their strategies to say, what do I do core and what I keep as core? What do is non-core to me can be taken as a service. But what will be very effective is, how do I manage to do that service much more effectively? How do I get the service at much more effective SLAs and turnaround times and everything? And what do I do from a customer experience perspective? I think this, so every entity will go through it, KK sir. I don't see that as an option today. And firms like us or EPS or everyone will say that, how do we help to grow our business? But grow our business very differentiated. It cannot be the same old strategy, will not work for us any longer. I can take a lot of use cases, honestly, but no, it's very interesting. As you start to build out use cases, everyone will have a very different business model. Everyone have a different revenue model, cost models. So you will see a lot of our new opportunities that need to be thought through as a part of any one strategy. KK sir?
Mani sir, can you take it out? I think he's freeze.
Who is frozen?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, it has been a very Herculean experience and a long experience. And I still have, I think, a couple of guys who obviously just don't have questions. One of the questions I still have is possibly is from Hitesh Thakkar. He says, what are the views on RBI's recent announcement to align alternative digital payments to the new umbrella entity, and how this will change the Indian landscape of payments?
I thought I answered this sometime back. Hitesh, I think KK did ask me this question, but Mani, I can repeat my thoughts in summary. I would say that two ways. One, I think NUE is a way forward. There is no alternative. It is a definitive ask, which has been as a demand that has been generated more from bringing in technology, reducing the overall country risk, payment risk. And third is bringing in a public-private partnership to be able to accelerate. And at the end of the day, what's going to happen? You're going to get better customer experience, newer business models, payments are going to be much more frictionless and secure. So you're going to have a lot of opportunities on the table. So NUE, in my mind, is the best thing that is going to happen, not for India as a country, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. KK is basically on the other line, phone line. KK, you want to?
Yeah, sorry, I saw completely closed on that. I think that has completely broken down.
Okay, good.
Just close it up, please. Find out what's almost done.
I'm just basically just closing it out on your behalf.
Yeah.
So okay, thanks. Yeah. So I think your last end of the session, I think is the last question for anybody. I think if somebody else want to ask, if they can put up the hands, I'll pick them up. Otherwise, I have one more question from one of the viewer, Rinda Sherika, and she, along with Sriram, has another question. So, what is your view on position of Indian banks, particularly the PSB, in adoption of newer models? One. Second is, Sriram says, since digitalization is the way forward, would you be saying that Indian digital tech companies? Oh, I think you answered the same question for Philippines. So I think you have answered the same question. So,
I did answer all of these because I'm also
thanks.
looking up all the
I have no questions. Is there anybody else who have a question? Please basically put your hands up.
Sir, I think Mr. Tyagarajan has.
Yes, go ahead.
No, I've done, Mahesh, the question was around, is there any traction of, you said new business models are to come. My question is, to be specific to India, do you see any traction of such new business payments model that is to come in India?
Well, I would say that's if you look at it, use the next 2.5, 3, 1 quarter as people get back slowly into the office. If each of us in our payment space go back to our banking community, fraternity, and say that, hey, I can help you achieve A, B, C in a better way than what you did till date. I will let you leapfrog. I'll get you to do things better on the digital side. I'll get you to do better on the customer experience side. You stop the investments that you've been doing to run it in silos. Why will someone not listen? Why will someone? It's all about how we collaborate. That's my simple ask there. Today, this situation has forced everyone to think. Look up today's ET or some of the times. Every bank will be faced as they come out of the COVID to say, where is my NPA list? Where is my NPA charter? Where is it gone? Where do I focus in getting more clients onboarded? Where do I get in terms of how well can I manage my risk from a lending perspective? Are people credit worthy enough to do it? So a lot of their focus is going to say what they do with respect to their own internal parameters. This is where presents great opportunity for folks like us who are in the payment systems and who are sitting outside, who are sitting as players who can help overall country deliver a better experience at a price that we can make sure that we don't bust ourselves. That's very important in my mind.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mahesh.
Yeah, I think it's we had Mahesh only for 30 minutes, but he has taken another 30 minutes.
No worries, anytime, Mani.
For staying with us, and it has been an honor to basically host you out here.
Thank you, Mani. Really appreciate you inviting me.
So, looking forward to basically having another session, another time, provided basically even COVID is there, not COVID is there. So I was not prepared for being a host out here because KK basically pushed me through this. So thanks a lot, Mahesh. It's a pleasure.
Take care and hope to see you soon in at Starbucks.
Thanks.
Okay, take care, buddy.
Thanks.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Mahesh.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone. Really
great show.
appreciate it.
Thanks.